Good evening. Great to see you, Derek and Chris and Martin and Carol. It's good to be talking to you again. What we're going to do this evening is just talk about a tool that I think we've all had a go at using, that's about how we might preempt conflict that could arise in our marriages. So we're going to get Martin to just describe that tool, and then we can just talk a little bit about what our experiences have been of using it. So over to you, Martin.
Sure, thanks, Mavis. Yes, I mean, it's good from time to time to kind of just go sideways and use some kind of a diagnostic tool or something that would just help you reflect as a couple. And most people we've come across tend to like to do something that involves a bit of scoring. And so this tool, just to whet your appetite, has got 20 fantastic questions. They're kind of just randomly scattered, not in any particular order, but as you go through and answer those questions, each partner, each spouse has their own 20 questions. They have their own scores, so 0 meaning this is never the case in our marriage whatsoever, through to 4, this is always true and we're absolutely hunky-dory. And the idea is it's a compare and contrast. So each spouse, the man and wife, have their own sheets, go away, do their scoring, and then come and compare at the end of the exercise and go through. And the scores are added up and then categorized. So you start to see an emerging picture around 4 key areas of connectedness. And, you know, there's no right or wrong answers. Some people will score highly on certain questions and not as well on others. But the point is that these are objective questions and they're in areas that every couple kind of encounters and goes through. And there's even reassurance in going through this little questionnaire, you know, in certain areas that, you know, well, we're not the only ones who perhaps struggle with this area, or we're not the only ones who excel in this area. And the questions are kind of, you know, phrased in a way that's reassuring, but in a way that also helps subsequent conversation and exploration of each area once you add all the scores up. And the scores themselves get added, they get grouped together into 4 main areas, and that's to do with your friendship as a couple, how well you communicate as a couple. It goes there in terms of questions about your physical relationship as well. So that's good, doesn't get skirted around. There's questions about that area too. And then finally, one to do with dreams and visions and aspirations for your future together, because we want to be people who look forward in our marriages, not constantly looking back with regrets about anything that's gone on before. You know, we're on that positive trajectory together. So it's a fun diagnostic tool to do together. Carol and I have really enjoyed doing it. We've all had a go, and we're just going to share some of our feedback from using it, and hopefully whet your appetites to have a go too.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Martin. That's a really great start. So how have you found it? Derek and Chris, how did you find just completing questions?
Okay, well, we found the questions very clear. And any hesitancy in scoring, you know, as to an individual question, as to why you wouldn't give it an always score or a never score or sometimes score, actually helped reveal our thoughts and our thinking around that area. Very good at prompting that, you know, reminding us of our feelings or our thoughts, you know, thinking about it. But maybe we hadn't expressed to each other, but he'd actually brought it up. So when we went on and compared our scoring, you know, we could share things that maybe we hadn't, you know, and it was really good. We found it was it encouraged us in our conversation in a very positive way into all areas. And you know, it's just good to sit down and take a rain check of how are we now. Because if you don't know where you are now, how can you know where you got to go forward, like, you know? Yeah. So we found it great, yeah.
Yeah, but we had a similar thing, I think you were saying about in terms of the scoring. So
when we did it, it took about an hour. to be honest. And during that process, we find that in answering the questions, Mavis was more cautious in her scores than I was. But that creates discussion. And when we had the discussion, we find we're not far off at all.
Yeah.
Just that she's more cautious in the scoring. Oh, I'm not too sure about that. But when we talk about we were on the same page.
Yeah, so I knew we were on the same page because I didn't, where I put a 3, I actually didn't have a way of making it a 4. So it probably is okay. Actually, it is in our marriage. There wasn't there wasn't a difference actually in terms of that. But it was helpful just to have that conversation and realise, yeah, I'm the one who's a bit more cautious, and Carlton was a bit more definite in terms of his scoring. But it also helped us to identify topics that there weren't things that we had talked about before. We hadn't seen them as an issue, but actually we found things that, oh yeah, we are different. We are thinking differently about these areas, and maybe it's worth us, talking a bit more about them. And yeah, we found that. What about you, Martin and Carol?
Yeah, I think like you're saying, Mavis, we really enjoyed doing the questionnaire, and I thought when going into it that our perceptions on things would be very similar in all of the areas, but actually when we finished the questionnaire in one area there was quite a disparity, so that led to sort of more discussion. So I was quite surprised at that, really. But then the other thing about it that I really liked was even the questions themselves were like, well, I'd never thought about doing that. Do we do that?
Yes.
Like where it says about, are we good in encouraging each other in what each of us do? And I thought, do we do that? So it does make you sort of think about like different areas. And then, we did come out quite similar on a lot of areas as well. But then there was like ideas even in the questions about how to actually go up a level, or, the little adjustments that we could make in our marriage that actually would cause greater connectedness between us. So yeah, we found it really, really helpful. Yeah.
We actually found, oh, sorry, Martin.
One thing I really liked about it is the fact that the questions then lead to you writing down some specific ideas in each of the areas about things you're going to do.
Yeah.
If it's an area where, overall, you can add scores up, and maybe you score in an area 15 out of 20 or something, that's pretty good. But, there may be something you can do around communication, for example, that can just help you notch it up just that little bit further still. So the fact that you can write down some concrete things that you then take forward intentionally and do with your spouse, to help him improve in particular areas, and that's a joint shared kind of responsibility. I think that's a good thing as well. So there's that kind of little bit of accountability in there. But it's true, I think some of this might depend on your personality. Similarly, I was more cautious in some of my scoring than Carol was, and that might just reflect that Carol's a glass, at least always half full type person, whereas I might be the other way around. It just depends, and it just depends on the particular questions. So, I mean, I think it's something to be done prayerfully. So to pray before you do it, and obviously, pray when you're going to share and so on. But it's some good, really, it's good, gritty, down to earth stuff. It's no nonsense, but really, I think really wise and perceptive in some of its questions. I like the one to do with, we encourage one another's spiritual growth. You can just park that question there. I leave that hanging, for everybody watching. Do you actually really, regularly, intentionally encourage one another's spiritual growth? Great question. Yeah. And it's just framed, as Derek was saying, framed simply, phrased simply, so that you can respond. Because it's hard actually to score a 4 and say that it's always true. Yes. That I encourage Carol's spiritual growth, for example. I might say it's usually true, but what can I do that's going to then just take me that notch higher and just be that little bit wiser, more aware, and actually receive from God and fulfill my role as husband better in terms of, you know, being everything that Christ is to his church, you know, in my relationship and how I relate to Carol. So it's just an encouragement, I think, and an inspiration for us to really press on in these things.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
yeah, I agree. One of the things that we talked about was that question about that we intentionally had a, I've got the question in front of me, but a date night every fortnight. And that really got us talking about, actually, are we doing that? Are we actually intentional about it?
We make the effort, but what generally happens is other things take precedence. Like you might have a phone call, you might have to, oh, I've got to do a certain piece of work before that, and then before you know it, time's gone. So we all good intentions, but we have committed ourselves to actually put a date in the diary. You know, let's see how long we keep that up.
And date night does not equal church conference or spring harvest in 1992.
That's right. The date night is let's go to church together.
It caused us to think about adjustments in that area as well, Mavis, because there are areas that most of them are areas that we've talked about before, discussed and decided we'll do this, this and this, but with time you let it slip. With, like Carlton said, good intentions, you let it slip, and we realized that we had to sit down and put in place some practical things that we were going to do in our marriage, just to spend time with each other.
On top of the weekly bungee jumping and free fall, diving, we got to do some crosswords together.
I think that's really helpful. I mean, I think what's good is, I mean, all of us have been married for quite a long time, and I think one of the things I think is been helpful about it is there were still things that we realised we could do that would improve our relationship. That actually, if there were things that were left, could cause a conflict. And I think just to be thinking about it positively in terms of what we could do to help each other and help our relationship, I think was a positive thing. So I think all of us, correct me if I'm wrong, would actually encourage couples to spend some time doing this.
Absolutely,
because even if you've done it before, your situations change, things come in, circumstances change, and you need to readjust and talk them out and think about them as the marriage goes on, really. So it's an ongoing thing, isn't it?
I'd almost say, if there's one thing you're going to take from the conference today, this is an easy thing to take to do, but the difference it makes is fantastic.
Brilliant. Thank you. Well, I think that's a really good positive note to end our conversation on, and then we can share where people can access the tool. So guys, again, thank you very much. Always great talking to you. Take care now.
Bye.